A sleek, midnight blue SUV cruises down a scenic highway, carrying the Wilson family toward their weekend getaway. Marcus Wilson sits behind the wheel, his commanding presence softened by the gentle look in his eyes as he glances at his wife Michelle beside him. At 45, Marcus carries himself with the quiet confidence of a man who has navigated challenging spaces his entire life. Michelle, 43, returns his glance with a warm smile that reveals her quiet strength, the kind developed through years of supporting her family while building her own career as an architect. In the back seat, 16-year-old Zora has retreated into her own world, headphones creating a barrier between her and the family conversation. Her observant eyes occasionally drift from her phone to the passing landscape, taking in more than she lets on. Beside her, 12-year-old Ellis remains absorbed in his book, his curious mind always hungry for information. The GPS announces their exit is approaching. The family is relaxed, Michelle consulting a travel guide that she's marked with color-coded tabs. "The lake house is supposed to be amazing," Michelle says, her finger tracing a path on the map. 3 days of nothing but water, woods, and no work emails. Marcus smiles, his shoulders visibly relaxing as they get farther from the city. "I had to turn off my notifications. Tyson's been texting nonstop about the Garner case." Zora removes her headphones, leaning forward between the front seats. "Dad, you promised. No work talk." "You're right." Marcus raises his hands briefly off the steering wheel in surrender. "I'm officially unplugged." Ellis doesn't look up from his book, but adds, "Until there's an emergency and the helicopter comes to get you." Marcus reaches back to ruffle Ellis's hair. "Not this weekend, buddy. This weekend is all about family." The Wilson family SUV enters a quaint but clearly affluent lakeside town. The streets are lined with boutiques and cafes, many displaying summer special signs in their windows. Shoppers carry branded bags, and several upscale restaurants have outdoor seating, filled with patrons enjoying the sunshine. The family looks out the windows, taking in the scenery of a town clearly accustomed to wealthy visitors. Michelle points to a building up ahead. "Let's stop for groceries. I saw a market on the map." Marcus checks his watch. "Good idea. We've got time before check-in." The SUV slows as Marcus signals and pulls into the parking lot of Lakeside Market, an upscale grocery with artisanal bread displayed in the windows and a chalkboard sign advertising local produce. As they park, Marcus notices several pairs of eyes turning toward their vehicle. A couple loading groceries into a Range Rover pause, watching the Wilson family a beat too long before returning to their task. "I'll grab a cart," Marcus says, trying to ignore the subtle shift in atmosphere he's felt hundreds of times before. Inside the market, the Wilsons split up to gather their supplies. Michelle and Ellis head to the produce section, while Marcus and Zora go to find drinks and snacks. As Marcus examines a bottle of local craft soda, he becomes aware of a store employee who seems to be restocking nearby shelves, but hasn't actually moved any merchandise in the past few minutes. Zora notices too. She moves closer to her father and whispers, "Dad, that guy's watching us." "Just focus on getting what we need," Marcus replies quietly, maintaining his composure. He's had this conversation with his children before. How to recognize when they're being monitored and how to respond. Stay calm. Don't give anyone a reason. Be twice as polite, twice as careful. They rejoin Michelle and Ellis, who have filled their part of the cart with fresh fruits and vegetables. Michelle gives Marcus a questioning look. She's noticed the same atmosphere, but says nothing. Instead, she reviews her list. "I think we just need bread and maybe some cheese from the deli counter." As they approach the counter, Marcus feels his phone vibrate. He's about to ignore it when he sees it's from his bureau supervisor. Despite his promise, he knows he can't ignore this call. "I need to take this." He apologizes to his family. "I'll step outside." Marcus walks toward the front of the store, phone to his ear. "Wilson here." His supervisor's voice comes through clearly. "Marcus, sorry to interrupt your vacation, but I needed to give you a heads up. The Collins operation has been moved up. I know you're a lead on this, but Ramirez can cover if you want to stay with your family. Marcus watches through the store window as a police cruiser pulls into the parking lot. I appreciate that, sir, but you know how long we've been building this case. I'll be back Monday evening, and we can. He stops mid-sentence as he sees a second police cruiser arrive. Both vehicles park near his SUV, and officers step out, examining his car with unusual interest. Sir, I may need to call you back, Marcus says, his training kicking in as he assesses the situation developing in front of him. Everything okay, Marcus? His supervisor asks. Not sure yet, Marcus replies. Let me call you back. He ends the call just as Michelle and the kids approach the register with their groceries. Through the window, Marcus watches the officers run his license plate. His stomach tightens, not with fear for himself, but with concern for his family. He's been preparing his children for moments like this their entire lives, but preparation never makes the reality easier. Marcus takes a deep breath and walks back inside to join his family, his weekend of relaxation already fading into the background as he mentally prepares for what might come next. He gently touches Michelle's shoulder, and she immediately reads his expression. What is it? She asks quietly, keeping her voice steady for the children's benefit. Police outside, Marcus says simply. Running our plates. Michelle's eyes harden slightly, but her voice remains calm. Everything's in order. We're just a family buying groceries for our vacation. Marcus nods, though they both know that sometimes order and reason aren't enough to prevent what comes next. He turns to his children, who have already noticed the shift in their parents' demeanor. Remember what we've talked about, he says softly. Stay calm, stay respectful, and stay together. As they pay for their groceries, the weight of eyes, from store employees, from other shoppers, and now from law enforcement, presses down on them, transforming what should have been the start of a carefree family vacation into a moment of tension all too familiar to the Wilson family. The encounter. The Wilsons exit the market with practiced composure, Marcus guiding his family with a gentle hand on Ellis's shoulder. The weight of their grocery bags is nothing compared to the weight of anticipation they carry. 2 police cruisers remain positioned near their SUV, and 3 officers stand in conversation, occasionally glancing toward the store entrance. Remember, Marcus whispers to his children. Hands visible, movements slow, voices calm. We've done nothing wrong. Zora's face hardens, a familiar anger rising. But why should we have to? Not now, Zora. Michelle interjects softly. Discussion later, safety first. As they approach their vehicle, the tallest officer, Officer Brennan, mid-40s with a weathered face and watchful eyes, steps forward, hand resting casually near his holster. His partners, Officer Mackenzie, younger, nervous energy, and Officer Ramirez, stoic, observing more than acting, flank him at a distance. Afternoon, Officer Brennan calls out, voice carrying across the parking lot loud enough to draw attention from nearby shoppers. This your vehicle, sir? Marcus stops at a respectful distance, grocery bags still in hand. Yes, officer. Is there a problem? We've had reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in some suspicious activity in the area. Officer Brennan's eyes scan the family, lingering on their faces before dropping to their grocery bags. Mind if I see some identification? Michelle steps slightly forward, positioning herself between the officers and Ellis. We've just arrived in town for a weekend vacation. We haven't been anywhere except this market. Officer Mackenzie circles around to the back of their SUV, peering through the windows. Coming from where? Philadelphia, Marcus answers, voice steady despite the familiar burn of indignation rising in his chest. We rented a lake house for the weekend. Which one? Officer Brennan demands, his tone suggesting the answer matters more than it should. The Carson property on Pine Lake Road, Michelle responds, her architectural precision coming through despite the tension. Ellis shifts nervously, stepping closer to his father. Marcus feels his son's anxiety and places a reassuring hand on his shoulder, acutely aware of how the gesture might be perceived by the watching officers. "I asked for identification," Officer Brennan repeats, his tone hardening. Marcus nods, moving deliberately. "My wallet is in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it now." The atmosphere tightens as Marcus slowly retrieves his wallet. Nearby, a white couple loads groceries into their car, watching the scene unfold without bothering to hide their stares. Another family hurries their children into their minivan, doors closing with emphatic thuds. Marcus hands over his driver's license. Officer Brennan studies it for a long moment before looking back at Marcus's face, comparing the photo to the man before him with unnecessary scrutiny. "This address is in Philadelphia," he notes. "Yes, as I mentioned, we're here on vacation," Marcus responds, the patience in his voice masking the calculations running through his mind. 23 years with the Bureau, and these moments never get easier. "And what do you do in Philadelphia, Mr. Wilson?" Officer Mackenzie asks, rejoining his partner. Before Marcus can answer, Officer Ramirez speaks up for the first time. "Sir, do you have the rental agreement for the lake house?" Michelle reaches into her purse. "I have it right here, along with our confirmation email." Officer Brennan barely glances at the documents Michelle offers. Instead, he looks back at Marcus's ID, then at Officer Mackenzie. "Run this," he says, handing over the license. Zora shifts her weight between feet, anger and anxiety battling in her expression. She catches the eye of Officer Ramirez, who briefly looks away, the first sign of discomfort from any of the officers. "Sir," Officer Brennan continues, "would you mind opening your trunk?" "May I ask why?" Marcus responds, his voice remaining respectful but firm. "What specifically are you looking for?" Officer Brennan's posture stiffens. "Like I said, there have been reports of suspicious activity. A vehicle matching your description was seen in connection with some recent break-ins at lake houses." Michelle exchanges a glance with Marcus, years of unspoken communication passing between them. She knows he's making a series of rapid assessments. The legal grounds for the search, the spectacle unfolding around their children, the delicate balance between standing on principle and ensuring everyone's safety. "Dad," Ellis whispers, his voice trembling slightly, "did we do something wrong?" The innocence of the question strikes Marcus with physical force. He kneels down to Ellis's eye level, grocery bags now on the ground beside him. "No, buddy, we haven't done anything wrong. Sometimes people make assumptions based on what they see rather than who we are." Officer Mackenzie returns, his expression changed, now uncertain. He whispers something to Officer Brennan, whose eyes widen almost imperceptibly. A tense silence follows before Officer Brennan speaks again. "Mr. Wilson, you didn't mention you were federal law enforcement." The revelation hangs in the air. Nearby shoppers who've been watching the scene unfold suddenly find their groceries fascinating. Marcus stands slowly. "You didn't ask about my profession, Officer Brennan. You asked for my ID and where we were coming from." Officer Ramirez steps forward, positioning himself slightly between his partners and the Wilson family. "Perhaps we can sort this out more privately," he suggests, gesturing away from the growing audience. Michelle shakes her head. "My children are tired and hungry after our drive. We'd like to get to our rental and start our vacation." Her voice carries a quiet dignity that demands respect. "Unless there's a specific reason you need to detain us further?" The dynamic has shifted, but Marcus recognizes that the situation remains fragile. He's witnessed and investigated how quickly these encounters can escalate, how misunderstood movements or perceived disrespect can transform routine stops into tragedies. Officer Brennan returns Marcus's license. "Just doing our due diligence," he says, his tone now professionally neutral. "We've had several reports recently." "I understand," Marcus replies. "Community safety is important. It's why I do what I do." The implications of his words aren't lost on anyone present. Officer Mackenzie shifts uncomfortably, while Officer Ramirez maintains his observant silence. As the officers begin to step away, Zora speaks up suddenly. "Would you have stopped us if we were white?" Golden afternoon light spills across Pine Lake as the Wilson family's SUV winds along the shoreline road. The natural beauty contrasts sharply with the tension still lingering in their silence. Michelle navigates them through the final turns with the GPS, while Marcus's hands remain steady on the wheel, though the slight tightness in his knuckles betrays his continued processing of the encounter. When they finally pull up to the Carson property, a spacious lakefront cabin with a wraparound porch and private dock, Ellis's face brightens despite the afternoon's events. "It looks just like the pictures," he says, the resilience of youth allowing him a momentary escape from the weight of what transpired at the market. The family unloads in near silence, each carrying bags and suitcases up the porch steps. Inside, the cabin welcomes them with pine-scented air and rustic charm, a space designed for comfort and connection, for the very healing they now need more urgently than when they first planned this getaway. Zora drops her bag in the entryway, the thud echoing through the quiet cabin. "I need some air," she announces, already heading toward the back door. No one tries to stop her. Michelle and Marcus exchange knowing glances. Their daughter processes through movement, through space, through solitude before she can find her words. "I'll start unpacking the groceries," Michelle offers, her hand lingering on Marcus's arm as she passes. The touch carries 20 years of shared understanding. "I'm here. We're okay. We'll make sense of this together." Marcus nods and turns to Ellis, who stands uncertainly by the stone fireplace, running his fingers absently over the smooth river rocks. "Want to help me check out the dock?" Marcus asks, offering his son both distraction and connection. As they step outside, they spot Zora at the water's edge, skipping stones with precise, forceful throws. Her back is straight, her movements controlled, channeling her anger into each perfect arc before the stones disappear beneath the lake's surface. Marcus and Ellis make their way down a winding path through tall pines to the wooden dock that extends into the clear blue water. They sit side by side, legs dangling, the gentle lap of waves against the pilings creating a rhythm beneath their silence. "Dad," Ellis finally says, his voice small against the vastness of the lake, "what would have happened if you weren't FBI?" The question hangs in the air, simple yet profound in its recognition of privilege within oppression, of the complex layers of protection and vulnerability they navigate as a family. Marcus takes his time answering, understanding the weight his words will carry. "There are no guarantees, Ellis. My badge offers some protection, but it's not a shield against every assumption or bias." "That's not fair," Ellis says, the pure moral clarity of a 12-year-old cutting through to the heart of the matter. "No, it's not," Marcus agrees. "Fairness would mean being seen for who we are, not what we look like. Fairness would mean not needing to prove our belonging." He puts an arm around his son's shoulders. "But fairness isn't what we're working with yet. So we work with awareness, with preparation, with supporting each other." Ellis leans against his father, the physical connection grounding them both. "Is that why you became FBI? To make things more fair?" Marcus looks out across the lake, considering how to distill his complex motivations into terms his son can understand. "Partly. I still believe, that change can happen from both outside and inside systems. Your mom works to design spaces where everyone feels welcome and seen. I work within law enforcement to help ensure justice is truly just." He squeezes Ellis' shoulder. Different paths, same direction. Back at the house, Michelle unpacks groceries methodically, arranging items in the unfamiliar kitchen with architectural precision. The routine task gives her hand something to do while her mind processes. Through the window, she watches Zora, who has moved from skipping stones to sitting cross-legged on a large boulder, her notebook open on her lap, writing, as she always does when trying to make sense of the world. Michelle is slicing fruit when Marcus and Ellis return. Ellis heads straight for the stairs, announcing he wants to claim his bedroom, his resilience allowing him to shift focus in a way the adults cannot yet manage. Once he's gone, Michelle sets down her knife and turns to Marcus. "Are you okay?" The question isn't merely about his emotional state. It's their shorthand for a deeper inquiry. Are we navigating this correctly? Are we balancing truth with protection? Are our children learning both resilience and hope? Marcus leans against the counter, the carefully constructed professional demeanor giving way to the vulnerability he allows only with her. I keep thinking about that moment when Brennan realized who I was. That shift in his face. He shakes his head. 23 years with the Bureau, and I'm still expected to justify my existence in spaces like this. Michelle moves closer, resting her hand on his chest, and Zora calling it out so directly. I was proud and terrified all at once. She gets that from you, Marcus says with a small smile. That unflinching clarity. And your courage to speak it, Michelle adds. She's watching us navigate this every day, finding her own way through. Their conversation pauses as the back door slides open and Zora enters, her notebook tucked under her arm, her expression calmer, but still carrying the intensity that is so fundamentally her. I want to talk about what happened, she announces, claiming a seat at the kitchen island. Not just what happened today, but what it means. Marcus and Michelle exchange glances. Their daughter never retreats from difficult conversations. It's one of her strengths, though sometimes they worry about the burden such awareness places on her 16-year-old shoulders. We're listening, Michelle says, sitting across from her daughter while Marcus leans against the doorframe, creating a space of safety and openness. Today wasn't about us, Zora begins, her words carefully chosen. I mean, it was about us in that moment, but it's about something much bigger. She opens her notebook, revealing pages of her angular handwriting. I've been thinking about Officer Ramirez. Marcus tilts his head, curious about this unexpected focus. Did you notice how he positioned himself? Zora continues. How he tried to de-escalate. He's navigating the same system, but from inside it, like you, Dad. Caught between identities and expectations. Marcus feels a swell of both pride and sorrow at his daughter's perceptiveness. Proud of her insight, sorrowful that such awareness is necessary so young. I also keep thinking about what Ellis asked, Zora says, flipping to another page in her notebook. About what would have happened if you weren't FBI. Because that's the reality for most people who look like us, right? They don't have badges to make officers step back. Michelle reaches across the counter to take her daughter's hand. That's why we talk about these things as a family, so you understand both the reality and the possibility for change. But that's just it, Zora says with sudden intensity. We talk about it in our family. Dad talks about it at the Bureau. You talk about it in your design firm, Mom. But those officers, that town, are they having these conversations? Is anything actually changing? The question lands with weight, the fundamental challenge of working for systemic change while living within the system itself. It's not a question with easy answers, and both Marcus and Michelle recognize the importance of honoring its complexity rather than offering platitudes. Change isn't linear, Marcus finally says. When I first joined the Bureau, there were so few black agents that people would mistake me for support staff in my own office. Now I lead investigations, mentor younger agents, influence policies. He moves to sit beside Zora. Do we still have far to go? Absolutely. But dismissing the progress makes it harder to keep pushing forward. Sometimes I'm just tired, Zora admits quietly, her usual confidence giving way to a vulnerable truth. Tired of being the lesson, the example, the one who has to educate everyone else by just existing in spaces. Michelle circles the island to embrace her daughter from behind, resting her chin on Zora's head. That exhaustion is real, and you get to feel it, express it, honor it. Part of why we take these trips, why we create family spaces like this, is to rest from that burden, even if today reminded us how hard that can be. The conversation pauses as Ellis bounds down the stairs, oblivious to the emotional weight in the kitchen. Can we go swimming? The lake looks amazing. His enthusiasm creates a welcome shift, a reminder that despite everything, they are still on vacation, still entitled to joy, to relaxation, to the simple pleasure of cool water on a warm afternoon. That sounds perfect, Marcus says, grateful for his son's timely interruption. Let's all change and head down to the dock. As the family disperses to find swimsuits, Marcus catches Michelle's hand, pulling her into a brief embrace in the hallway. We're raising remarkable children, he whispers against her hair. They're watching us, she replies, learning how to navigate this world with both awareness and hope. It's the most important work we do. Later, as the afternoon sun casts long shadows across Pine Lake, the Wilson family swims in the clear water, their laughter echoing across the surface. From the dock, Marcus watches Michelle teaching Ellis how to float on his back, her hand steady beneath him as she guides him through surrendering to the water's support. Nearby, Zora executes perfect dives from a floating platform, each entry into the water clean and purposeful. For these moments, they exist simply as a family enjoying the lake, not as examples or exceptions, not as representations of anything beyond themselves. This too is resistance, Marcus thinks. This claiming of joy, of ordinary pleasure, of the right to simply be. As the sun begins to set, they gather on the dock wrapped in towels, watching the light change across the water. Ellis leans against Michelle, nearly asleep despite his insistence that he isn't tired. Zora sits cross-legged at the dock's edge, taking photos of the sunset with her phone. "We should invite Grandma next time," she says, glancing back at her parents. "She would love this place." The simple statement carries weight, a looking forward, an assumption of return, a refusal to let one encounter define this space for them. Marcus meets Michelle's eyes over their children's heads, recognizing the significance of Zora's comment. "That's a great idea," he agrees. "This lake is big enough for all the conversations she'd want to have with you about your writing." Zora smiles, the first genuine smile since the market, and her cooking would be way better than whatever Dad's planning for dinner. "Hey," Marcus protests with mock indignation, grateful for the lightening mood. "My grilling skills are legendary." "Legendarily basic," Michelle teases, joining the gentle ribbing that signals their family finding its balance again. As darkness falls, they make their way back to the cabin, its windows now glowing with warm light against the deepening blue of evening. The path is illuminated by solar-powered lanterns that create pools of light among the shadows, guiding them safely home. Inside, as Marcus prepares dinner and the others shower and change, he finds himself reflecting on the officer's words. "Enjoy your stay in Cedar Lake." What had been intended as a dismissal, perhaps even tinged with sarcasm, becomes instead a quiet affirmation. They will enjoy their stay, not despite what happened but alongside it, carrying both the weight of the encounter and the lightness of their connection as a family. This, too, is part of their journey, learning to hold contradiction, to find joy within struggle, to create spaces of safety and truth for themselves and each other. As the sounds of his family fill the cabin, Ellis's laughter, Zora's music, Michelle's soft humming, Marcus understands that this is also resistance, the deliberate cultivation of wholeness in a world determined to fragment them. When dinner is ready, they gather around the rustic dining table, the uncomfortable plastic chairs from the market a distant memory as they settle into the warmth of shared food and conversation. Ellis regales them with facts about lake ecosystems from his book. Zora shares lines from a poem she's working on. Michelle describes her plans for tomorrow's hike. And Marcus listens, really listens, to his family, to the people who see him completely, who understand both his strength and vulnerability, who share his navigation of a world that is simultaneously beautiful and broken. In their voices, in their stories, in their presence, he finds the renewal he came here seeking. Outside the cabin windows, Pine Lake reflects the night sky, stars mirrored in its still surface. Inside, the Wilson family rebuilds the sanctuary that the afternoon's encounter temporarily shook. They do this not by forgetting what happened, but by placing it within the larger context of their lives, lives that contain both struggle and joy, both resistance and rest, both sharp awareness and peaceful belonging. Morning breaks over Pine Lake with a gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through pine branches to dapple the cabin's wooden floors. Marcus wakes before the others, a habit formed through years of pre-dawn case reviews and early morning training sessions. He moves quietly through the silent house, preparing coffee and stepping out onto the porch to watch the mist rise from the water's surface. The events of yesterday still sit with him, not dominating his thoughts, but present, like a stone in his pocket that his fingers keep returning to, feeling its edges, its weight. 23 years with the Bureau has taught him to process such encounters methodically, to examine them for insight rather than allowing them to erode his sense of purpose or belonging. The sound of the sliding door announces Michelle's presence, before her arms wrap around him from behind, her cheek resting between his shoulder blades. "You're thinking loud enough to wake me," she murmurs, accepting the coffee cup he offers, without breaking their connection. "Just processing," Marcus answers, covering her hand with his, wondering how Officer Brennan is processing, if at all. Michelle moves beside him, both now leaning against the porch railing as the lake awakens before them. "You're considering reaching out to the department, aren't you?" It's not truly a question. She knows him too well, understands the careful balance he maintains between his identities, his responsibilities. Marcus nods, taking a slow sip of coffee. "Not to file a complaint," he clarifies, "but to offer perspective, to create a learning opportunity." He turns to face her fully. "What happened yesterday, it's not unique to us. But my position gives me a platform to potentially influence how their department approaches these situations in the future." Michelle studies him, her architect's sight taking in the subtle tells that others might miss, the slight tension in his jaw, the quiet determination in his eyes. "You're not just thinking about the police department," she observes. "You're thinking about Ramirez." Marcus smiles, grateful yet again for her perceptiveness. He's navigating impossible terrain, Michelle. I recognized it in him immediately. That hyper-awareness, that constant calculation of how his actions will be perceived by both his colleagues and his community. He looks back toward the lake. 20 years ago, that was me. And now, Michelle prompts gently. Now I have enough seniority, enough reputation within the Bureau to speak certain truths without risking everything. He might not be there yet. Their conversation pauses as they notice a small boat gliding across the lake's surface, an early morning fisherman casting his line into the still waters. The simple scene reminds them why they chose this place, this weekend, the opportunity to breathe, to exist within natural beauty, to reconnect each other away from the demands of their professional lives. "Whatever you decide," Michelle says finally, "we support you. But remember why we came here. You need this rest as much as any of us." Marcus nods, drawing her closer. "Today is for us. For hiking and swimming, and whatever else the kids want to do. Tomorrow is soon enough to decide about the police department." Later that morning, the Wilson family sets out on a trail that circles Pine Lake. Day packs filled with water bottles, trail mix, and the guidebook Ellis insists on carrying despite having practically memorized it. The forest embraces them with the scent of pine and the distant call of birds, creating a sanctuary of natural sounds that replaces the tension of yesterday's encounter. As they walk, Zora falls into step beside her father, their long strides naturally matching rhythm. For a while, they hike in comfortable silence, until Zora speaks without looking at him. "When those officers stopped us yesterday, you went into a different mode," she observes. "Not just dad mode, but something else. Like you were running some kind of internal protocol." Marcus considers his daughter's perception, impressed by her insight. The Bureau trains us extensively for high-pressure situations. Over time, those responses become almost automatic. But this wasn't a Bureau situation, Zora points out. This was our family being profiled at a grocery store. True, Marcus acknowledges. But the skills translate, maintaining composure, de-escalating tension, assessing intentions and potential outcomes. He steps carefully over a fallen log, offering Zora his hand. "The difference is that in Bureau operations, it's just me at risk. Yesterday, it was all of us." Zora accepts his help over the obstacle, then reclaims her independence, pushing ahead slightly on the narrow trail. "I've been thinking about what you could teach those officers," she says over her shoulder. This surprises Marcus. "What I could teach them?" "Yeah." Zora pauses, waiting for him to catch up. "You have this unique perspective, black man, FBI agent father. You understand both sides of that interaction in ways they probably never will." Her eyes, so like her mother's in their directness, meet his. "If you don't share that perspective, who will?" The question lingers between them as they continue along the trail. Ahead, Michelle points out an eagle's nest to Ellis, their shared excitement carrying back through the forest. Marcus watches his wife and son, their faces upturned toward the treetops, completely present in the moment of discovery. "You think I should talk to the department?" Marcus says to Zora, not a question but a recognition of her suggestion. "I think you'd regret it if you didn't," she replies with the straightforward clarity that both challenges and grounds him. "Not just for us, but for the next family that looks like us who drives through Cedar Lake." Her words stay with him throughout the day. Through their picnic lunch on a sunny outcropping overlooking the lake, through the afternoon spent kayaking along the shoreline, through the evening campfire, where Ellis insists on making increasingly elaborate Esmores creations. The suggestion takes root, mingling with his own professional instincts and personal experiences until it becomes clear what he needs to do. That night, after the children have gone to bed, Marcus sits with Michelle on the porch swing, the gentle creaking of its chains keeping time with the chorus of night insects. He shares his decision, formed throughout the day's activities and crystallized during their family dinner. "I'm going to visit the Cedar Lake Police Department tomorrow," he says quietly, not to file a complaint, but to offer a training opportunity. A conversation. Michelle rests her head against his shoulder. "Because that's who you are," she says simply, always finding the bridge between confrontation and connection. "I want to bring Ellis," Marcus adds, surprising himself with the impulse, but knowing it's right. He's old enough to see that part of addressing these situations is engaging with them constructively, not just processing them privately. Michelle considers this, her silence thoughtful rather than hesitant. "He'll remember this forever," she finally says. His father walking into that police station not in anger, but in offering. It will shape how he understands his own power to effect change. Morning arrives with gentle determination, sunlight filtering through the pine branches to create patterns across the cabin floor. Marcus and Ellis prepare for their visit to town, both dressed casually but neatly. Marcus conscious of the impression they'll make, of the visual narrative they'll present upon entering the station. "Are you nervous?" Ellis asks as they drive along the shoreline road, the lake glittering beside them. "A little," Marcus admits, believing in honesty with his son. "Anytime we step into spaces where assumptions have already been made about us, there's reason for caution. But I'm also hopeful." Ellis nods, processing this balance of vulnerability and strength. "Is Officer Ramirez going to be there?" "I don't know," Marcus replies, "but I hope so." The Cedar Lake Police Station sits on the town's main street, a brick building with neat flower boxes beneath its windows, a deliberately approachable facade for an institution that doesn't feel approachable to everyone. Marcus parks their SUV directly in front, in clear view of the station's front windows. "Remember," he says to Ellis as they exit the vehicle, "we're not here to accuse or condemn. We're here to connect, to create understanding." Inside, the station is quiet on a Sunday morning, a single dispatcher looking up from her computer as they enter. Marcus approaches the desk with confident humility, Ellis slightly behind him, but standing straight, attentive. "Good morning," Marcus begins. "My name is Marcus Wilson. My family and I were stopped by officers from this department yesterday afternoon. I was hoping to speak with the chief or shift supervisor if they're available." The dispatcher's eyes widen slightly in recognition. Small towns, Marcus knows, have efficient information networks. "Let me see if Captain Rivera is available," she replies, reaching for her phone. While they wait, Ellis studies the community bulletin board with its notices for summer festivals and neighborhood watch meetings. Marcus observes his son taking in these ordinary elements of small-town life, understanding that this too is part of today's lesson, seeing the humanity within institutions, the community behind badges. A door opens, and a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and thoughtful eyes steps into the lobby. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Captain Rivera. How can I help you this morning?" Marcus extends his hand. "Captain, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. This is my son, Ellis." He gestures toward Ellis, who steps forward with the poised confidence Marcus and Michelle have carefully nurtured in both their children. "I was hoping we might have a conversation about an incident that occurred yesterday at Lakeside Market." Captain Rivera's expression reveals both recognition and concern. "Of course. Would you like to step into my office? As they follow the captain down a hallway lined with community service awards and historical photographs of Cedar Lake, Marcus notices Officer Ramirez at a desk in the corner of the squad room, his posture straightening as he recognizes the visitors. Their eyes meet briefly, a moment of unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Captain Rivera's office is modest but welcoming, with windows overlooking the lake and framed photographs of his family displayed alongside his credentials. He gestures toward chairs facing his desk, then surprises Marcus by moving his own chair around to join them in a small circle, eliminating the barrier of his desk. "Before we begin," the captain says, "I want you to know that Officer Ramirez filed a supplementary report about yesterday's incident. It prompted me to review the body camera footage this morning." Marcus nods, appreciating the initiative, but waiting to hear more before responding. "I'd like to invite Officer Ramirez to join us," Captain Rivera continues. "Would that be acceptable to you?" "Absolutely," Marcus replies, sensing an unexpected opening, a possibility beyond what he'd anticipated when planning this visit. When Officer Ramirez enters moments later, his professional demeanor can't quite mask his surprise at being included. He takes the fourth chair, completing their circle, his gaze meeting Marcus's with quiet respect. "Mr. Wilson has come to discuss yesterday's incident," Captain Rivera explains. "Given your report and concerns, I thought you should be part of this conversation." Ramirez nods, his posture indicating both attention and a certain guardedness that Marcus recognizes intimately, the careful navigation of being both part of a system and sometimes targeted by it. "First," Marcus begins, "I want to clarify that I'm not here to file a formal complaint. I'm here because I believe yesterday's encounter presents an opportunity for mutual understanding and growth." He glances at Ellis, including his son, in this moment of bridge building. "I've been with the FBI for 23 years, specializing in civil rights violations and community relations. What I experienced yesterday with your officers is something my family and I have experienced in various forms throughout our lives, regardless of my badge or position." Captain Rivera leans forward slightly. "I appreciate your approach, Mr. Wilson. After reviewing the footage, I have my own concerns about how the situation was handled." "My concern is less about the specific officers," Marcus explains, "and more about the broader patterns their actions reflect. When Officer Brennan mentioned reports of suspicious activity, I recognized a familiar dynamic, one where vague justifications often mask underlying biases, sometimes unconscious ones." Officer Ramirez shifts in his chair, the movement subtle but noticeable. Captain Rivera glances at him, then back to Marcus. Officer Ramirez raised similar concerns in his report. Marcus turns to Ramirez with genuine curiosity. "That took courage," he acknowledges. Ramirez meets his gaze directly. "Your daughter's question stayed with me," he admits, "about whether your family would have been stopped if you were white. It's a question I've asked myself many times about other stops, other encounters." Ellis, who has been listening intently, speaks up unexpectedly. "Do you ever feel caught in the middle?" he asks Ramirez. "Like you're part of something that sometimes treats people who look like you differently?" The directness of the 12-year-old's question creates a moment of surprised silence, followed by a smile from Ramirez, not dismissive but appreciative of the perception behind the inquiry. "That's exactly how it feels sometimes," he responds with an honesty that visibly surprises Captain Rivera. "Like standing with one foot in each of two worlds, responsible to both, but not fully belonging to either." Marcus watches this exchange with quiet pride in his son's emotional intelligence, in his ability to create connection through authentic curiosity. "This is precisely why I wanted to have this conversation," Marcus says, "because these dynamics affect everyone involved, officers, community members, departments as institutions, and addressing them requires exactly this kind of honest dialogue." Captain Rivera straightens, his expression thoughtful. "Mr. Wilson, would you be willing to share more specific insights? What could we do differently as a department?" The question creates an opening broader than Marcus had dared hope for. He feels Ellis watching him, understanding that his son is witnessing not just this conversation, but the possibility it represents, the potential for transformation through engagement rather than avoidance. I'd be happy to, Marcus replies. In fact, I've developed training modules for the Bureau on community engagement and bias recognition that might be relevant to your department. What follows is a conversation that extends beyond their expected time frame, flowing from specific suggestions about patrol protocols to deeper discussions about community trust, from tactical recommendations to philosophical reflections on the purpose of policing in diverse communities. Throughout, Ellis remains engaged, occasionally asking questions that bring the discussion back to fundamental principles of fairness and belonging. Officer Ramirez gradually becomes more vocal, sharing his own experiences and insights, his initial guardedness giving way to genuine engagement. Captain Rivera takes notes, asks thoughtful questions, and ultimately proposes a formal training collaboration between their department and Marcus's team at the Bureau. As the meeting concludes nearly 2 hours later, Captain Rivera walks Marcus and Ellis back to the station lobby. "This isn't just professional for you," he observes quietly. "It's personal. I appreciate that you chose to engage rather than simply file a complaint." "The personal and professional have never been truly separate from me," Marcus acknowledges. One informs the other. At the station entrance, they encounter Officer Brennan returning from patrol. He falters momentarily upon seeing Marcus and Ellis, then approaches with measured steps. "Mr. Wilson," he begins formally, "I didn't expect to see you here today." "Officer Brennan," Marcus acknowledges. "My son Ellis and I were just having a productive conversation with Captain Rivera and Officer Ramirez about community policing strategies." Brennan glances at his captain, then back to Marcus, clearly recalibrating his understanding of the situation. "I see." Ellis steps forward, extending his hand to Officer Brennan with a confidence that fills Marcus with quiet pride. "It was nice to meet you, Officer Brennan." The simple gesture, this young black boy offering his hand to the officer who had profiled his family just a day earlier, creates a moment of profound possibility. Brennan hesitates only briefly before accepting the handshake, something shifting behind his eyes. "You too, Ellis," he responds, his tone softer than it had been in the market parking lot. As Marcus and Ellis return to their SUV, the morning sunlight gleams off the lake visible at the end of Main Street. Ellis is quiet for a moment before turning to his father. "Do you think anything will really change?" he asks. Marcus considers the question carefully, respecting his son enough to offer neither false certainty nor cynical dismissal. "Change isn't an event, Ellis. It's a process, sometimes fast, sometimes painfully slow. What happened in there today was one step in that process. But was it worth it?" Ellis persists. "To spend our vacation time doing this?" Marcus starts the engine, looking at his son, this thoughtful, perceptive child who will grow into a young man navigating these same waters, these same complicated currents of identity and belonging. "Building the world we want to live in is always worth our time," he says, "even on vacation." As they drive back toward the cabin, Marcus notices Ellis looking out the window with new awareness, taking in the town of Cedar Lake not just as a vacation destination, but as a community of people with their own stories, their own potential for growth and change. When they arrive back at the cabin, Zora and Michelle are on the dock, Michelle reading in an Adirondack chair, while Zora sketches the landscape in her notebook. They look up as Marcus and Ellis approach, their expressions curious, but patient. "How did it go?" Michelle asks simply. Marcus exchanges a glance with Ellis, giving his son space to share his perspective first. "Dad was amazing," Ellis says with unfiltered admiration. "He didn't get angry or blame anyone. He just connected, made them see things differently." He looks up at his father,